The wind swept across the wide-open plains of Texas, carrying the scent of wild sage and the faint hum of cattle lowing in the distance. The sun, half hidden behind drifting clouds, poured a gentle light over the sprawling acres of Hawthorne Ranch, one of the largest and richest estates in the county. The land stretched far and wide, fences, barns, horses, and fields that glittered golden under the morning sun. Yet despite the beauty, the man who owned it all, Ethan Hawthorne, hadn't smiled in years. Ethan stood by the fence line, his gloved hands resting on the worn wood. His Stetson hat shaded eyes that had seen too much loss. 5 years ago, his wife Lydia died in an accident. Her car overturned on a rain-slick road, leaving him with a heart full of guilt and a house full of silence. Since that day, Ethan had spoken to no one unless necessary. His workers respected him, but they feared him too. The locals called him the Stone Rancher. That morning, as he watched the wind ripple through the tall grass, he heard laughter. Soft, high-pitched laughter, the kind that could melt the hardest heart. Ethan turned. By the far edge of the fence, where the dirt road met his land, 2 little girls stood. They couldn't have been older than 6 or 7 twins. They wore matching faded pink dresses, both torn at the hem, and each had a ribbon tangled in her messy blonde hair. Their small hands gripped the fence wire as they peered in at the horses grazing. Near the barn, Ethan frowned. He wasn't used to visitors, especially not children. "Hey!" he called out, his voice deep and rough like gravel. "You girls lost?" The twins looked at each other, whispering something. Then one of them, braver than the other, looked up with big blue eyes shimmering under the sunlight. "No, sir," she said softly. "We were just looking." The other girl, clutching a small, battered teddy bear, added, "Your horses are so pretty." Ethan's expression softened for just a moment, though he quickly hid it beneath his usual stern mask. "You shouldn't be out here alone," he muttered. "Where's your mama?" The first girl's smile faltered. She's sleepin'," she said. Ethan frowned deeper. "Sleepin'? You mean back home?" The second girl's lip trembled. "She don't wake up no more," she whispered. "The doctor took her away last night." A strange silence fell between them. Even the wind seemed to stop. Ethan's heart gave a heavy thud in his chest. He looked down at the dirt, then back at their tearful faces. "What's your names?" he asked quietly. "I'm Lila," said the braver one. "And this is Lucy." Ethan nodded slowly. "Lila and Lucy, you two got any family nearby?" They both shook their heads. "Mama said our daddy was a cowboy," Lucy murmured. "She said he lived on a ranch just like this one." Ethan felt something twist inside him, something he hadn't felt in years. A memory, Lydia's voice laughing as she'd said she wanted children someday. The dream they never got to have. He took a step closer, his boots crunching on the dirt. "You girls got anywhere to go?" Lila shook her head. "No, sir. We were staying in the old motel down the road, but they told us we had to leave now 'cause she can't pay." Ethan exhaled deeply. He wasn't a man of words. He didn't know how to comfort anyone, much less 2 fragile children with tear-streaked cheeks. Still, something in their voices, a desperate sweetness, pulled him in. "Come on," he said gruffly. "I'll get you something to eat. Then we'll figure things out." Lila's eyes widened. "Really?" "Just for today," he muttered, turning away to hide his expression. The twins squealed softly and crawled under the fence, their tiny boots kicking up dust as they followed him toward the big ranch house. Inside, the air smelled faintly of coffee and cedarwood. The place was spotless but empty, too clean, too quiet. Ethan hadn't had a real meal with anyone in years. As the girls sat at the long wooden table, staring in awe at the grand room, Ethan fetched them biscuits and milk. They devoured the food, giggling between bites. And for the first time in years, the ranch echoed with laughter again. Ethan found himself watching them, a strange warmth spreading through the cold corners of his heart. After breakfast, Lila climbed down from her chair and walked to the window. Outside, the horses grazed lazily in the sun. "Mr. Rancher," she said softly, "can we stay here today?" "Just for today, please." Ethan blinked. "Stay? Why would you—" "Just today," Lucy added, hugging her teddy close. "We'll be good, we promise. We don't got no one else. We just want someone to be our daddy. For today." Ethan froze. The words hit him harder than a bullet. "Be our daddy." For a long time he couldn't speak. His throat tightened, and his mind filled with the sound of Lydia's laughter again, her voice saying, "You'd make a wonderful father someday, Ethan." He turned away, gripping the edge of the table. "You girls don't know what you're asking," he whispered. Layla stepped closer, her small hand brushing his. "We just want today to feel safe." Ethan looked down at that tiny hand, trusting, innocent, and for the first time in years, he felt the ice around his heart begin to crack. Outside, thunder rumbled in the distance. A storm was coming. He glanced toward the darkening sky, then at the two small girls standing in his kitchen, looking up at him with hope shining in their tearful eyes. Maybe, just for today, he could be what they needed. He sighed heavily. "All right," he said finally, his voice low but gentle. "Just for today." The girls gasped and threw their arms around him, their laughter echoing through the halls of a house that hadn't known joy in far too long. And though Ethan didn't know it yet, that single promise, just for today, would change his life forever. The storm rolled in before sunset, turning the golden fields of Hawthorne Ranch into waves of shadow. And rain. Ethan closed the barn doors, his boots heavy with mud, as the sky cracked open with thunder. Inside the big ranch house, the twins were sitting by the fire, wrapped in blankets far too big for them, sipping hot cocoa. He watched them quietly for a moment. Their laughter, the way they whispered secrets to each other. It was as if they'd lived here all along, like they belonged. For years, Ethan's home had been nothing but walls and silence. But now, there was warmth again. Still, deep down, he knew this couldn't last. They weren't his children, and when the morning came, someone would come looking for them. Maybe a sheriff, maybe social workers, and then they'd be gone. But for tonight, he let the warmth stay. "Mr. Ethan," Lucy called, her voice soft and sleepy. Can you tell us a story?" He hesitated, his hand pausing on the edge of the mantel. "A story?" "Yeah," Lila chirped. "Mama used to tell us bedtime stories about cowboys. But she always said the best ones weren't about heroes, just about good men who tried to be better." That made him smile, a faint, crooked smile he didn't even know he could still make. He sat down in the old armchair near the fire and leaned forward. "Well," he said, his voice slow and deep, "there once was a cowboy who lost everything he ever loved. He thought his heart was gone too. But one day, two little angels wandered onto his land and reminded him how to live again." Leela's eyes lit up. "That's a nice story." Ethan nodded. "Yeah, it is." The girls soon drifted off, curled up together like two kittens on the couch. Ethan stayed awake, staring into the fire. Outside, the rain hammered the roof like an old heartbeat. Something about those girls. Something didn't add up. He couldn't shake the feeling he'd seen them before, or maybe someone who looked like them. When the clock struck midnight, he noticed a small glint of silver by Lucy's teddy bear. A tiny locket, heart-shaped, old and worn, with initials carved on it, L.H. Ethan froze. "That locket!" He reached out, hands trembling, and opened it. Inside was a faded photo, one that hit him like lightning. It was a picture of a young woman, smiling under the sun, standing beside a horse. Her hair golden, her eyes soft. He knew that face. He'd known it for years. Lydia, his late wife. His pulse pounded in his ears. Lydia, his Lydia, smiling in that photo with a tiny baby in her arms. And beside her another baby. Twin babies. Ethan staggered to his feet, heart racing. No, it couldn't be. She never told him, never said anything about... He sat back down, clutching the locket. The rain outside grew heavier. Every thought blurred together until only one truth stood out. The twins had his wife's eyes. The next morning, the storm had passed, leaving the earth soft and shining. The girls woke to the smell of pancakes and bacon. Ethan was already at the stove, quiet and heavy-eyed. Lila climbed onto a chair and grinned. "You can cook, just like Mama." Ethan forced a small smile. "Your Mama taught me a long time ago." The girls blinked. "You knew her?" Lucy asked, surprised. Ethan hesitated, then nodded slowly. "Yeah, I did." He sat down across from them, the sunlight spilling across the wooden table. "Girls," he began carefully, I need to ask you something important. Do you remember your mama's name? Lila nodded. Lydia, she said proudly. Mama Lydia Hawthorne. The name echoed through the kitchen like a whisper from the grave. Ethan's chest tightened. Lydia Hawthorne. She hadn't even changed her name when she left. Did she ever tell you about your daddy? He asked quietly. Lucy looked down, playing with her teddy bear. She said he was brave, that he had a big ranch with a red barn and a sky full of stars. Ethan swallowed hard. And she never said why she left him. Lila shook her head. She said she didn't want to make him sad no more. She said she had to go away for a while. Tears burned Ethan's eyes. All those years, he thought Lydia had died alone in that accident. But maybe she'd been hiding something. Maybe she'd wanted to protect their daughters. He stood and walked to the window, staring out at the pastures. Girls, he said softly, I think I might be your daddy. Silence. When he turned back, both twins were staring at him, wide-eyed. You mean you're really our daddy? Lila whispered. Ethan nodded, tears finally spilling down his weathered cheeks. Yeah, baby, I think I am. The twins looked at each other and then ran into his arms. Their tiny hands clung to him as if afraid he'd vanish. I told you, Lucy, Lila cried. Mama said our daddy was a cowboy and he'd find us one day. Ethan held them close, his heart breaking and healing at the same time. For the first time in years, he let himself cry, real, shaking tears that washed away years of loneliness. When the sheriff came later that afternoon, following reports about 2 missing children, he found Ethan sitting on the porch with the twins in his lap. Mr. Hawthorne, the sheriff said gently, removing his hat. We've been looking for those little girls. Folks at the motel said their mama passed last week. Ethan nodded slowly. I know. They're mine, Sheriff. The sheriff's brow furrowed. You sure about that? Ethan handed him the locket. The sheriff studied it, then the girls, then back at Ethan. Finally he nodded. Guess you don't need me then. Take care of 'em, Ethan. As the sheriff drove off, Ethan looked out over the fields, the sun setting in soft pink light. The twins were playing near the fence, the same fence where he first saw them. Lila waved. Daddy, come on, play with us. Ethan laughed, a deep, full laugh that echoed through the valley. He walked to the fence, the same place where his loneliness had ended and his life had begun again. He lifted both girls into his arms, spinning them under the glowing sky. From that day on, Hawthorne Ranch was no longer silent. There was music, laughter, and the sound of tiny boots running through the halls. The rancher who once lost everything found not just his daughters, but his heart again. And every night before bed, when the twins whispered, "Good night, Daddy," Ethan would look up at the stars and whisper back, "Thank you, Lydia, because love always finds its way home."